Good morning, my name is David. These are my colleagues Bryce and Alan, and we're group 2 taking on chapter 3 of interpersonal communication and the self. So communication, oh my goodness, there it is. Communication is an essential. Socializing is what we do and who we are. It's one of the advantages that we have as the dominant species on this planet. And as much as we understand what the world is outside of our minds is, our conscious minds are still being studied and developed. To understand what it is at the core of communication, we're going to cover a few concepts regarding the self, which are self-concept, development of self-concept, there it is, self-fulfilling prophecies, as well as self-disclosure. And I'd like to start with the development of self-concept. Let's hit the nail right on the head and ask, who are you? And the question being rhetorical, of course, you might muster up a few words to answer that question, but I'll go ahead and give you my answers. I'm a good cook. Okay, where is it? There it is. I like to fly my drone, and I do not like homework. So these are describing my, but not limited to, likes, dislikes, and special talents. So this is an example of my self-concept. In greater detail, the book defines it as the relatively stable set of perceptions you hold for yourself, and it goes on to explaining the other aspects, like your emotional states, values, and roles, and so on. Some factors described of self-concept by Professor McWorthy. Communication with others is much like reflective appraisal, which means that you're mirroring the judgments of others. Self-observations should be self-explanatory when you notice something about yourself. Group associates, when you're part of an entity, you're going to identify with that entity. So I work at UCSD, I'm UCSD staff, and I'm a student at MSJC as well. Group assumed roles, there it is. Assumed roles are the roles that you assume. So when I married my wife, I became a husband. When I had kids, I became a father, and so on. Upward, downward, social comparison, basically comparing yourself to others. An example I gave is getting the highest grade in my science class, and therefore I must be good at science. So the development of self-concept, it's developed as early as 6 to 7 months in humans. The text provides an example of a baby staring at its feet, eventually making a connection that the limb that is attached to him or her is part of them, essentially is them. Now, there are two corresponding theories that describe the development of self-concept. That's reflected appraisal and social comparison. And also self-esteem. That's part of self-concept that involves the evaluation of self-worth. So your self-concept might include being quiet, argumentative, or serious. How you feel about these qualities determines your self-esteem. Self-concept is also, it's subjective. So what this entails is, the definition of being subjective is perceiving oneself with the perceptions of others and observable facts. We as humans can create a positive self-concept, but we're pretty notorious about being insecure and negative when self-evaluating. Some severe cases that are described in the book: obsolete information, the effects of past failures that linger long after they've occurred. Like when you wet yourself in front of your third grade class while you're taking a walk, it doesn't help. It doesn't secure your failure Likewise, it doesn't any past successes doesn't secure your future successes. Distorted feedback, the remarks of overly critical parents, rude coworkers leaves a lasting effect, as well as the positive. Giving your child a lot of praise boosts their ego, and that definitely provides that lasting effect. Perfectionism is, well, the implicit message is that a well-adjusted, successful person has no faults, and it's a naive person will believe in perfection. Social expectations is what society expects. So ironically, our perfectionist society generally rewards those who downplay their strengths. So in the US, it's common to be humble. So why is the self-concept important? A quote that really resonated with me by Alexander Hamilton: if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. What that means is that one's core values require no external justification, which means stand up for yourself. It's important as well because it provides a self-assessment of your personality and communication style by self-reflections and personal developments. Some suggestions I've written down to progressively develop your self-concept is to take note of what it is now and comparing it to yourself in the future, as well as surrounding yourself with significant others that give you accurate, affirming messages of you. It's also important to know that the self-concept is resistant to change, which means that your self-concept doesn't change, rather your understanding of it does. And a healthy self-concept is flexible because people change. The self-concept is vital in communication and is quite influential in our personalities in ways of altering our future behaviors as well. To talk more about that is my colleague Bryce.
How are you doing today? My name is Bryce, and I'll be talking about the self-fulfilling prophecies. Alright, so starting this project, I was reading through chapter 3 to find a subject that I wanted to talk about that fit into real-world scenarios. Mostly everything in the chapter and in our book can be related to real-life scenarios, so naturally it was hard for me to pick from such a diverse number of options, right? However, once I came across a self-fulfilling prophecy, it had piqued my interest. I thought to myself, as I was rereading this part of the chapter, so many things in my life can relate back to this one concept. So I started to do more research. Being a visual learner, I started to look throughout YouTube. I found this video discussing self-fulfilling prophecies and the Pygmalion effect. In this video, they discuss certain statistics for young hockey players in Canada. About young hockey players in Canada, and it really piqued my interest. About 40% of great hockey players are born within the months of January and March. This is because in Canada, they cut off the hockey team age groups in around January. So kids that are born in April through December would technically be months younger than other kids in their age groups. And as you can see, this guy is way bigger than the other guy. This is because in the age groups. Naturally, this has influenced the children's physical appearance. However, I was more interested in how it affected their mental state. With these kids that were born in January through March having such significant physical advantage over the other kids born in the later months, the coaches naturally paid more attention to these kids. Having that extra mental boost can help you in life in any competitive sport. That is how this topic ties into the self-fulfilling prophecy. Our book describes a self-fulfilling prophecy to occur when a person's expectations of an event and her or his subsequent behavior based on those expectations make the outcome more likely to occur than would otherwise have been true. After rereading chapter 3 and watching this video, I found an article about an older hockey player. This hockey player's name was an older hockey player that spoke about his mental game being just as important as his physical game. This hockey player's name was Jeff Sarowick. Jeff Sarowick. This hockey player's name was Jeff Sarowick. Jeff stated that the decision and commitment to train my mental game was a pivotal point in my career. So here's a man born in the month of January that plays hockey, that literally has statistics on his side, but cannot get ice time due to his size. After continuing to have this problem continuously, Jeff decided to see a sports psychologist to improve his mental game. As he stated before, the psychologist asked Jeff about his goals and told him to simply state what he wanted out loud and then continuously repeat it to himself during the games. Right there is the beginning of the self-fulfilling prophecy, holding a certain expectation for yourself. Now, during games, Jeff would continue to chant this mantra and his goals. Chant this mantra in his head. Eventually, he won an award that season for breaking a record for the all-time scoring by a defenseman. That is the second part of the self-fulfilling prophecy, behaving in accordance with that expectation. Now, after winning that award, Jeff continued to chant his mantra in his head during games. What was his mantra or goal, you may ask? Well, later that year, Jeff ended up playing for the Bruins, and his mantra or goal was, I want to play for the Bruins. That right there is an example of the third part of the self-fulfilling prophecy, the expectation coming to pass. Expectation coming to pass. However, not only did Jeff play for the Bruins, but he won a prestigious award that year that he calls the Eddie Shore Award, awarded to the best defenseman in the American Hockey League. That right there, ladies and gentlemen, is the example of the fourth and final stage of the self-fulfilling prophecy, reinforcing the original expectation of yourself. His career was far from perfect. However, I felt this played perfectly into the self-fulfilling prophecy, considering he says he used that as a tool to improve his mental game. In the first place, this is because despite being born in the months he should have thrived in, coaches paid him no mind due to his physical stature. Therefore, he had to improve his mental state by himself. By doing so, he used the self-fulfilling prophecy to its full potential. It just fascinated me how mental the sport of hockey could be. This just proved to me that the self-fulfilling prophecy can be used in any situation to improve yourself in any way. The way people see you, but most of all, it's important to always think about your mental game. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed my part of this oral presentation, and I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Alan.
All right. Hi, I'm Alan, and we're going to be talking about self-disclosure. So disclosing intimate details in your day-to-day isn't going to be something you're really think about, prominently throughout the day, but nonetheless is very important. Self-disclosure, it distinguishes itself from other communications, being that what's being talked about, the subject, is yourself, and that's being delivered to mainly one other person or maybe a few other people, but it is an intimate discussion. And then the other ways we can look at self-disclosure is just the amount of depth and honesty of the information, what kind of information we're talking about. It's not really some things that are going to be openly available information. They're usually more intimate details about yourself, your opinions, your feelings, things like that. And we even have two models from the book that discuss the amounts of self-disclosure. We have the social penetration model, which discusses the breadth and the depth of topics discussed, so the variety of topics, and then how deep you go into those topics. And then the other one is the Johari window model, which if you look on the image right there, it's just information that can either be known to self and known to others, not known to self or known to others, not known to others, but you're known to self, or the last one, not known to others and not known to yourself. Okay. So why should I open up? Let's see. So thinking back, sorry about that. So thinking back to any intimate relationship that you've had in the past, chances are that you've had, a discussion about them, about details ranging from, facts that you believe in, opinions, feelings. And what makes it that intimate relationship is those discussions, right? Disclosing things about yourself that are not openly available. And the reason we do that is because it creates an environment of honesty, and that allows the other person to feel welcome to do that as well. And therefore, it's just a circle, right? Just a continuation of that cycle. The more honesty brews, and then we're going to be able to open up more and open up to the other person. And that's really one of the biggest reasons why self-disclosure is really important in those intimate relationships. So any other reasons? We have a lot of other ones, a lot of other benefits to why we should be disclosing. One is catharsis, which is a term that the book uses for just basically getting things off your chest. And that's either internal dilemmas or anything that you really want to discuss about yourself, opening that up to another person for discussion, and hopefully that person can help you talk it out, or even simply just letting it out and hearing those words for yourself can help you make a decision or help you make come up with different ideas about what you've been thinking about. Another reason is validating any ideas about yourself or any things like that. We see that in the LGBTQ community with their coming out moment. This is something very intimate about themselves that they have had in their whole lives. They trust in a friend, a family member, and they let it out. They want to let it be known to the world and let it validate that this is who I am. This is, the person that I've always been. And that's another great reason of why that self-disclosure is needed in these relationships. And lastly, opening up is an attractive trait, right? People want to be with a person that opens up. No one wants to be in a relationship with someone who doesn't talk to them, especially with someone who doesn't talk to them about real things, opinions, feelings, whether it be about the relationship or about other things in the world. That dialogue needs to happen in order to maintain relationships and enhance them through intimacy. And the biggest thing I like to focus on is if these relationships didn't have the ability to self-disclose, what they would be. They would just basically be surface level relationships, surface level discussions. No dialogue would really have any depth, and that would allow for no real connection instead of it just being pent up inside of us, these ideas, these emotions that we want to let out. That's what self-disclosure is for. We are allowed to talk to other people, and hopefully they talk to us about the same kinds of things. And the importance is immense, and that really goes for all the topics that me and my colleagues have really discussed. And with that, we'll go back to David to conclude this presentation.
Thank you, Alan. So in conclusion, the concepts that we have covered today are about the self in interpersonal communication. We learned that understanding your self concept is to understand what makes you, your personalities and traits. We also learned how to properly use the self-fulfilling prophecies in your advantage to improve your mentality, and it's the literal game changer. Also, we learned that disclosing personal information creates stronger connections, a stronger bond, which ultimately develops into an intimate relationship. And with that being said, we hope this presentation gave you some suggestions on improving your communication. Again, my name is David, my colleagues Bryce and Alan. We hope you enjoyed our presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.